of that. It's been a landmark weekend for Australian rules football. For the first time ever, all 18 clubs are represented by a men's and women's team. The arrival of Hawthorn, Sydney, Essendon and Port Adelaide yesterday helped to kick off season 7.
What an amazing occasion we are here for above the stadium. They've been waiting such a long time for this moment.
For her first as a bomber. And what a beauty it is too.
Mules just bobs up out of the pack and snaps the goal.
Maddie Pressparker's a lifelong bomber, the grab of the sash. The Bombers with their first AFL win.
Every time I talk about it, I want to cry. It's been a dream come true to play for Essendon, and I just look down at this jumper and I feel very privileged.
Great stuff, Maddie Pressparker. How good was she crossing from Carlton to Essendon, playing her first game for the team that she grew up barracking for? Every time you talk about it, I don't want you to cry, Megan, but the AFL talks about finally being whole. 18 men's teams, 18 women's teams. It is a really a moment of celebration after 120 plus years of VFL and AFL. What did you make of the 4 new teams?
Well, I am a very emotional person, and seeing Maddie, especially as an Essendon supporter, we know they've had, a pretty tumultuous week or two in the tabloids, and to see that victory and to see, Maddie, it's been her dream to play for her team, the Bombers, and they got the victory, and it's just a nice little bit of a positive, a positive spin for a club that's not had a great couple of weeks. But back to the women's, it's honestly just one of the most exciting, we just sort of touched on the NRLW. Seeing these women having the opportunity on the big stage. We witnessed Essendon versus Hawthorn, on the grandest of stages at Marvel for the inaugural match. So it really is just such an exciting time for women in sport, and I can't wait to see what season 7 has in store with these 4 expansion clubs in the system. It's
interesting talking to a couple of players. Obviously the new pay deal that went through before the start of this season, it was sort of hurried and rushed through, but it's life-changing for 500 plus players because many of them have been able to give up their day job and they juggle now playing football with study. So very much, earning twice as much effectively. Is the future of AFLW at Docklands under a closed roof? After what we saw last night, the game got moved from Port Melbourne, where capacity was supposedly 10,000, to Docklands. They had to tick over 12,000 there last night. Great to see the cheer squads at either end. Is this the future of the women's game?
It's a great conversation piece, Kel, because I think one of the beauties of the women's game has been the opportunity to go back to these great suburban grounds, and we see that in the NRL at the moment, don't we, Pam, with smaller grounds. Brookvale Oval, Leichhardt will host the final game of the home and away season next weekend. People love going back to these suburban grounds, that tribal nature of football. So you have that. And then there's smaller grounds as well. So North Sydney Oval with the Sydney Swans taking on St Kilda in the Swans' first ever AFLW game. 8,000 people there in a ground that doesn't hold too many more. It looked fantastic.
It did, didn't
Absolutely it? Popped on television, whereas a 50,000 seat stadium at Marvel where you close the top 2 tiers of the ground, I'm not really decided either way because I look at the version of the game last night at Marvel and these women were able to show their skills at the optimum level because they played on a fantastic football ground.
Yeah, I agree with you
Stadium,
on that.
no win. So I don't know.
The quality of the
was
contest.
fantastic. But I look at North Sydney and I go, if you were someone who'd never watched AFLW before, you would look at that and go, wow, there's something really special happening here. And it was still, you could still see it at Marvel, but when you see a 50,000 seat stadium with 12,000 people in it, it doesn't quite have the impact, I think.
But don't you think if you're one of the best players in the AFLW competition, I mean, these were two new teams that'll probably finish down the end of the ladder. If you're one of the best teams or one of the best players, you're just itching, just saying, please play me under the closed roof so we can just show the very best skills in the best conditions. Because often the suburban grounds are, you know, really windy. It's really tough for these females to show just how good their skills are.
Well, speaking of big grounds, something that I am really looking forward to is the game next week with the Melbourne Demons. They're going to get the opportunity to play the curtain raiser for the men's final between Sydney and Melbourne at 5 p.m. at the MCG. So I think it's more just about, you know, the opportunity that these women get to say, you know what, I'm playing footy at the top level at these grand stadiums like the MCG, the spiritual home of footy. So it is really quite exciting.
I definitely see that, but I also like the suburban ground stuff too. I think that as a fan, you look at it and it's more of a game day experience. You go, I would love to be there. Whereas if there's a stadium that's kind of mostly empty, it doesn't have the same atmosphere.
Yeah.
It's why you need the investment in some of these suburban grounds.
Yeah.
Again, we're seeing it at Princes Park in Carlton. We're seeing it at the Whitten Oval as well. Women's football is going to benefit from... And I think the AFL, with the new broadcast deal as well, is going to invest a lot of money now in some suburban grounds to get them up to a level. The thing I've loved about this weekend with the AFLW, there's been this magical feeling about it. You see those women, the pride they have, the emotional experience, but that's reflected in the stands as well. And these young girls leaning over the fence in their club colours, who can see a version of themselves playing on the grand stage, as you say, that is so special. And this is in its very formative stages. The game now has captured something completely new that will be there forever, which is so important, I think.
From something joyous to a little bit of heartbreak that might happen here. It's the curse of the number one draft pick in the AFLW. In the final moments of the game for the Sydney Swans last night, this is the Sydney Swans' number one draft pick, Montana Ham, injuring her knee. It can be a cruel sport. This is her first ever game in AFLW. The club fears it's an ACL and that she'll need scans. And then West Coast Eagles forward Kelly Gibson kicked the first goal for her team, and only moments later this happens, which looks like it might be an ACL as well, premiership player for the Adelaide Crows. So when you think of Isabel Huntington, Nina Morrison and also Gabby Newton, who's had the shoulder issues, there is a bit of a curse there. We hope, fingers crossed, it's not too bad.